If you were listening to the news in the aftermath of the 2024 election, you probably heard something like this.
Young men turned out in droves for Donald Trump. He gained a whopping 15% with males under 30, flipping the once blue demographic to red.
Young men showed up in a big way. Our exit polls showed that he outperformed where he was with young men from the past two cycles. He did better than 2016, better than 2020 with young men.
The Manosphere includes a wide range of podcasts hosted by men that talk about different topics like sports, entertainment, and politics sometimes, but not directly. Using those platforms was an effective part of President Trump's strategy in 2024.
I think what this reveals is the Manosphere is very strong, and it cannot be underestimated.
The Manosphere.
The Manosphere.
The Manosphere.
Manosphere.
The Manosphere.
After the 2024 election, the term manosphere suddenly seemed to be everywhere. It became shorthand for a growing wave of influencers offering advice, lots of advice, on everything from dating to health to personal finance, in multi-platform surround sound. But the manosphere had actually been growing for years, slowly becoming a cultural force, promoting a version of alpha masculinity grounded in supplements, crypto, and the UFC. But Donald Trump's victory signaled that the manosphere was also a political force. A cadre of very loud, very online men had driven a political realignment by trumpeting male grievance. I'm Julie Kohler, and this is White Picket Fence. This season, we're exploring America's gender backlash, the way that gender is being used as a Trojan horse to advance an extremist agenda. We are in a moment in which a political faction is working overtime to reestablish a rigid gender hierarchy, one in which men and women play separate and unequal roles. And so far this season, we've highlighted a couple of different elements of this backlash: attacks on transgender people, pronatalism, and we've examined how authoritarian leaders are using these issues as tools for consolidating power. But the success of this effort to turn back the clock hinges on mass buy-in. Specifically, it requires getting huge numbers of men to buy into an ideology that inherently devalues women. So in this episode, we're going to explore what that looks like and how they're doing it. So I work with a lot of progressive nonprofits. And in the months following the 2024 election, I was in so many rooms where people were asking one question: where's the left's Joe Rogan? What they meant by that was, how could the left replicate Rogan's success? Find someone who is similarly compelling to young men. Get them to actually listen. But that question, that framing, misses the point. Joe Rogan and his many contemporaries did not appear out of thin air.
It's safe to say over the years, I would estimate there's been billions with a B invested in this.
That's Julie Milliken. She's the vice president of Media Matters for America, a watchdog organization that monitors the media for conservative misinformation. According to Julie, the manosphere actually belongs to a long tradition of right-wing media that goes back decades. It didn't develop organically. Rather,
this is the result of decades-long investment in building out a robust right-wing media infrastructure to counter a more traditional mainstream media ecosystem.
It started in the 1980s with the boom of conservative talk radio. Think Rush Limbaugh.
The right saw the opportunity there. They really came in and they were able to take over this new medium and, use it to their advantage.
They saw a gap in how people were getting their information about how the world worked. They saw a way to spread conservative ideology to new groups, people who were feeling left behind or overlooked. And these people connected with the personalities whose voices they heard every day. From there, talk radio evolved into cable news.
Fox wasn't actually the first one that they attempted. It was just the first one that was successful. And once they got the formula that worked, it took off. And what this did was it started to create this infrastructure where the right was able to start having a messaging apparatus where they could continue to, have this bubble where they were able to just repeat talking points over and over again. And they were able to create a lot of noise around an issue that they would start to be able to get the mainstream media to pay attention to.
And who was feeling left behind? Men. Now, obviously, men are not a monolith. So I spoke with someone who could lay out which men we're talking about here. Pasha Dashgard is the Director of Research for the Polarization and Extremism Research and Innovation Lab, or PERIL for short, at American University.
It's quite a mouthful. But honestly, the acronym has done wonders for us, so we stick with it.
Several decades ago, around the advent of talk radio, second wave feminism was blooming. And the same ground that nurtures progress nurtures backlash. So as women gained more rights, men started to push back with their own concerns. They called themselves men's rights activists.
Traditionally, men's rights activists, coming out of the 70s, they were really concerned about issues around alimony and child support and the ways that courts and official institutional systems treated men and boys, like divorced dad energy.
A lot of these concerns focused on the rise of no-fault divorce. Women now had the ability to end a marriage simply because they weren't happy. They didn't need any other reason. And many women who'd felt their only path to stability was through marriage suddenly saw other possibilities. Divorce rates grew rapidly. Domestic violence dropped by nearly a third. Women's suicide dropped by about 20%. Women entered the workforce in droves. They could have their own credit cards. They could access abortion care. They could thrive without tying themselves to a man. On the other hand, men's rights activists felt that no-fault divorce was unfair, a system that empowered women at men's expense, financially, legally, and emotionally. Even though women were gaining ground, men still retained their privileges. But they could feel women catching up. Their fear of relative equality was enough to provoke anger. And then, in the 90s and early 2000s, this strain of thinking evolved, started speaking to a new generation of men who were coming of age alongside the internet. A new cottage industry of men's activism sprang up. Like the men's rights activists of the 70s, this group peddled male grievance. But their focus became more expansive. They weren't just fixated on marriage. They also had concerns about dating.
And they were really concerned around this kind of pseudoscientific understanding of attraction. But what it was really trying to emphasize was biological determinism, that women are biologically made to want higher status men or be attracted to high testosterone men, or women can't help but want to procreate with alpha males and tough guys.
So to combat these worries, these so-called activists developed a set of rules. Rules that encouraged young men to mold themselves into a particular model of masculinity. Rules that were guaranteed to get them a woman. And they came up with a catchy name, too. The pickup artists. Pickup artists would try to convince other men that their inability to attract women was a reflection of their beta-ness. They capitalized on loneliness. Follow these rules, and you too can get a woman. The pickup artist scene wasn't just online. It made its way to reality TV. In 2007, VH1 aired a show called The Pickup Artists, where men competed to learn how to win women. They used bizarre strategies taught by a self-styled dating guru named Mystery.
Imagine if you had women with you, and you were smiling and laughing, and you were taking pictures, and you were saying, all right, hands off, women, please. That sort of behavior within that flash moment will show pre-approval and pre-selection from women to all the other women in the room. And that bartender needs to know...
Over time, the flashy, performative masculinity of the pickup artist era solidified into a full-fledged ideology, the Red Pill movement. The name came from the movie The Matrix. In one scene, the main character is offered a blue and red pill. The blue pill allows him to stay in a world of comforting illusions. The red pill requires him to wake up to the painful truth of reality.
The Red Pill was ostensibly a self-help group, the sort of ideological evolution of the pickup artist community. Same sort of ideas, same sort of beliefs, same sort of tone.
The Red Pill contingent pitched itself as a space for self-empowerment and improvement, a place to learn ways to dress better, talk to women, and frankly, get laid. They rejected old standard advice like, just be yourself. Instead, they believed that women didn't want a nice guy. They wanted a player, and there was a formula you could follow to become one. But pretty quickly, the Red Pill community took a darker turn into what became known as the Black Pill.
That's where the incel community came out. That's the involuntarily celibate. That's where it's like, none of the things that the Red Pill are saying is working, and I hate women, I hate myself, there's no hope for us. These guys were selling us false hope, and in reality, that's all just us coping with the reality that we're too short, or our jaws are not the right shape, or we're too ugly, and therefore we're gonna die alone. This is a pity party. This is a place for us to wallow, and for us to sort of breed resentment and breed toxic anger about our situation.
Other online communities encouraged men to opt out of the dating scene altogether. For example, one group, called Men Going Their Own Way, or MGTOW, urged men to avoid marriage in order to, quote, reclaim their autonomy and redefine success on masculine terms.
MGTOW was a lot of like a guy taking a selfie on a Harley, being like, I don't need women, look at how I'm thriving. But what happened is, as the incel communities got taken off Reddit and other sort of social media platforms for being hate groups, those members migrated into the MGTOW community. And so now Men Go Their Own Way is just the same sort of like toxic nonsense.
What all these strands share is a really jaded view of women.
Women are gold diggers. They're not going to, benefit you in your life. They're going to try and take all your money and take all of your resources. And so not only was there this sort of reconstruction of what women want, and this idea that women are duplicitous, that they're going to lie to you, that they're using relationships or they're using feminism to emasculate you. But beyond that, there was also this idea that these characteristics are fixed, that women are born this way, that women are, naturally duplicitous.
These ideas have been percolating for 50 years, often at the fringes. But social media made it easier for them to reach a broader audience, engage with more men. And at the same time, conservatives, who had long been capitalizing on male grievance to build audiences on other platforms, recognized an opportunity. Here's Julie Milliken again.
When social media came on the scene, they were very quick to see that this was going to be a powerful tool for them to be able to build out their ecosystem and their echo chamber and make it louder and make it stronger.
And so this vast infrastructure was poised and at the ready when a huge new influx of people, young men in particular, began searching for solidarity online when COVID hit in 2020.
Men were going online, especially young men. The type of content that they were seeking out were like things like dating content, and they were culture-based, right? Sports, dating, comedy, etc. And they were able to go in there and really be able to start finding voices in those spaces that they could then cultivate relationships with, and then start to get them to kind of talk a little bit more about right-wing politics.
And they knew how to go viral.
Right-wing content is just primed to do well on social media. It triggers anger, and anger does well with the algorithm. The algorithm loves anger. It's going to start feeding you more of it. And so that it drives engagement, and that's what the algorithm wants.
I would argue women are far more shallow than men, and you guys are far more rigid in your standards.
I love women. I love every girlfriend I've ever had. I love them, but they're distractions at the end of the day. I'm sorry, facts.
The more educated a woman gets, the worse her marriage prospects, because the more sophisticated women are, the more they insist on a high status male. And therefore, as I get more educated as a woman, there are just fewer men who are as educated or more than me. And therefore, I'm doomed to a life of solitude.
The root cause of all of the world's problems is basically that there's not enough men who walk around their houses with swords.
The more times that a woman shares her body with a man, her soul is kind of removed from her body.
Females don't have independent thought. They don't come up with anything. They're just empty vessels waiting for someone else to install the programming.
And this content soared to the top of the charts.
Across platforms, the right-leaning podcasters are dominating. So it didn't matter if it was YouTube, if it was Spotify, if it was Twitch, it was all going to be right-leaning dominant.
Which brings us back to today. The far right built a vast media infrastructure, and they had a captive audience to tap into when the conditions were right. A captive audience that, like the original men's rights activists, are struggling in some pretty real ways, economically, educationally, socially. Women outpace men in both high school and college graduation rates and employment. In 2020, during COVID, men enrolled in college 7 times less than their female counterparts. Since the 1960s, the number of men in the workforce has been steadily declining. And while women's wages have risen over the past few decades, lower and middle income men's have declined. Emotionally, lots of men are struggling as well. One study found that 15% of men claim to have no close friends, and another found that the majority of young men feel like nobody really knows them well. Men are nearly 4 times more likely to commit suicide. Many men are adrift and looking out at the galvanizing cultural forces that women have organized around for decades. Here's Pasha again.
Feminism has given women and girls a lens through which to make sense of their experience. There has been a pushback from its very outset, from men being like, I agree that patriarchy is bad, but where do I fit in this system?
Where do I fit into this society?
We have articulated what it is for a woman to exist in a feminist society and what it looks like for a woman to be a feminist. We have not, for obvious reasons, for very understandable reasons, articulated that similar kind of vision and model for men and boys about what they should do and how they should be.
And it's not just in social media spaces that boys and men are finding these models. Increasingly, they are looking to much more established spaces, traditional religions, the Bible. Over the same old news cycle? Tune into Hysteria, your weekly group chat with Alyssa Mastromonaco and Aaron Ryan, where no topic is off limits. From politics to pop culture, they bring you brutally honest takes on the stories shaping our lives. From powerhouse women like AOC to wellness trends and education. No sugarcoating, no doom scrolling. Just real talk, strong women, and hope to keep moving forward. Catch Hysteria wherever you get your podcasts. And tune into their YouTube channel for full episodes and a special series.
For the first time in decades, men in one particular generation, Gen Z, are identifying as religious at higher levels than women.
That's Catherine Joyce, journalist, author of 2 books, and the investigative editor at In These Times magazine. She's written extensively about how the Catholic Church and other strands of Christianity have evolved in the past decade, and Catherine has uncovered some surprising trends.
This sort of strange youth subculture that has appeared in a variety of cities around the US that includes this very edgy embrace of far-right politics, even white nationalist politics, and also includes like a really ostentatious exhibition of traditional forms of Catholicism.
This is a form of traditionalist masculinity. These are not the Harley-riding, men-go-their-own-way incels of the manosphere. Pasha Dashgard.
They do believe in marriage. They do believe in having children. They do want men to return to being the head of the household.
But they're united with the manosphere on one big issue.
This idea that men will be better, society will be better if we just return to a patriarchal sort of social system.
Perhaps the most prominent proponent of this more traditionalist, faith-based masculinity is J.D. Vance, who converted to Catholicism back in 2019. But there are many other high-profile examples, including many within the Trump administration.
A huge number of Trump's advisory board and cabinet members are Catholic, and overwhelmingly they are very conservative or right-wing Catholics. There's so many young Republicans who are converting to Catholicism that they have started describing themselves as a Catholic mafia that is going to take over DC politics.
As with the manosphere, many of these men are discovering these beliefs online and getting drawn in through a mix of algorithms, influencers, and digital community. There are even some Catholic influencers who have blended the lifestyle content approach of the manosphere with the principles of religion to sell their particular brand of masculinity.
All of this stuff sort of adds up to presenting Catholicism more as a cultural and political brand than an actual faith. The Catholic Church begins to seem more and more like it's associated with a particular conservative politics, a particular culture, particularly like a very online right-wing culture.
In other words, this is not your grandmother's Catholicism. And this new branding is having tangible results.
Here in the US, some individual parishes were reporting that they were seeing as high as a 72% increase in the conversion rates. Teenagers and young adults composed the highest group of adult converts. They were overwhelmingly citing the internet as being their biggest inspiration in one way or another.
This new influx of converts, pulled in by conservative corners of the internet, are also bringing with them talking points and beliefs that echo the manosphere.
There's been this growing emphasis on the idea that feminism is just completely incompatible with Catholicism. That starts to drive away a lot of the people who have been in the church for years and decades before that, and then, the church becomes more conservative still.
Just like the media, the church holds significant sway over culture and politics. Both the manosphere and the traditional Catholic movement, often called trad-Cath, are attempts to control the narrative around gender and reclaim power for the right. But in order for their vision to be realized, the far right needs women to buy in too. And while the buy-in for men is more obvious, it's a pretty sweet deal, the buy-in for women is a much harder sell. They essentially need to say yes to oppression. And in order for the far right to bring women into their sightline, they need to use some different tools. Next time on White Picket Fence.
People should be paying attention to this cultural crossover strategy that they have applied really successfully to young men who I think, frankly, were like more primed to be receptive to a right-wing message in some sense. They're applying that towards women now.
White Picket Fence is an Acast Creative Studios production. Our producers are Abby Delk, Sarah Schleid, Lucy Jones, and Joya Putnoy. Our editor is Maddie Foley. Additional editorial support by Vanessa Handy. Executive producers are Jenny Kaplan and myself, Julie Kohler. Original music by Sean Patel. Show art by Aria Goodman. Special thanks to Clean Cuts for audio production assistance.
This morning, a woman asked me if I wake up every morning and read the news and just totally lose my shit.
That's why we're launching a new podcast.
It's called How to Not Lose Your Shit.
How to Not Lose Your Shit.
My name is Katie Paris. I am the founder of Red Wine and Blue. We are a community of way over 500,000 women together now who are working to fight back against extremism.
I'm LaFonda Cousin. In addition to being the Chief People Officer at Red Wine and Blue, I'm also a yoga instructor.
I think we need to be real with the people that this podcast is not really going to be like an instructional guide to how not to lose your shit.
I lose mine several times a week, every week.
Maybe it is about trying to make a difference while losing our shit a little bit less.
And to the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation for their generous support for this season.